Hey guys, Stephanie here, the Aeroponic Tower channel, and some of the towers are indoors. We're up to 1, 2, 3. I have 4 indoors growing. I'm getting a 5th one in today, and then I'm gonna move my 2 home units. These are all flex units. I'm gonna move my 2 home units in, and we'll be growing in this garage for December, January, February, and most of March. I also have 2 towers outside with fall crops that I'm hoping I can get broccoli and cauliflower to fully grow there. They're making their heads right now, so there's hope for that before it gets too cold. But we're in that weird season where it's actually warm out today, but it's too cool most nights for food to thrive. So I've got to get it all in the garage and get it set up. So let's take a little tour, and I'm going to show you guys something I just purchased on eBay. All right, so we're gonna plant some of these towers out together, and you know I'm really big on interval planting and making sure there's always food to harvest. So there's things I've been preparing that are growing for a while so that I don't have this huge gap in food. There's a beet, but there's also a lot of openings that we need to fill because it was just kind of hard to stay on top of the interval planting. Here's my leeks. When you're going inside and out, some of the plants just can't handle that. So larger things had to be pulled. But my leeks are regrowing. I made a video on these. So 2 weeks, we've already got a nice regrowth there. The ones on the bottom are coming in. We've got beautiful beets. Pretty decent sized lettuce. This is an eggplant that transitioned. I'm hoping it's gonna be okay. The flower looked great yesterday, not so much today, so we'll see how that goes. Here is a tomato, not super healthy, but I wanted to see if it could transition well. And then I turned off the tower by accident, so it actually got a little abused, but we'll see how that does. I cut my stinging nettle back, and it's already regrowing. And I have a video coming out on that. If you want to check it out, if you're interested in stinging nettle, that is a mega superfood, excellent for prostate health for men. My husband drinks that nightly in tea. We have Merlot Napa cabbage, pretty good sized lettuce, which will keep us fed. Here's another eggplant, looking a little bit abused. The basil was not happy about the cold, and I don't think it'll transition well. Most of them died already, so now I know. I put that in my journal so I don't make that same mistake. Same as the green beans, they're pretty sad, so I'm starting new ones. And then up here, I consolidated my aloe because it wasn't super happy with the cold. We went out of town and I just let things get too exposed. So I just put them all in one rock bowl to get nice roots, and then I'll break them apart, so I'm saving on real estate. And then here are the other tomatoes, and I wanted to run a little experiment and see if I could cut them back completely and get them to grow back healthy. So far, it looks like we might have a little growth coming in right here. Nothing on this one. There might be a little budding happening, so we'll see. I'll let you guys know. I have my squash and cucumbers. So when you're growing indoors, you're gonna need to manage squash and cucumbers for powdery mildew. I get a couple of things when growing indoors. I get powdery mildew. Now I'm not really indoors. You can see the drawers wide open. So I'm very prone to aphids because we have the door open and they can come in here easily. And then I get powdery mildew. So I'm gonna show you guys how I deal with my aphids. And then I have a spray that I put on for powdery mildew. And these are flowering. That's eggplant, patio baby. I cut this one back to see if it would survive, so we'll see. Some things look a little rough that transitioned. All right, and the floor is wet because I overfilled the tank. I totally forgot I was filling it up, not because the tanks leak. Back there's our home gym. This is my seed starting station. So this is a working garage, but these are all my micro dwarf tomatoes, and I have 1 dwarf tomato, and we're gonna fill the rest of this tower together. Look at how gorgeous these are though. They're so precious. So I talk about how I break celery apart. This one was left outside, I forgot about it. So it looks a little wilty right now, it'll pop back. But in here, I don't know if you guys can see that, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 celery plants. So when they get stronger, lift back up and maybe another inch, I'll break those apart and give them their own grow port. We've got 2 here that I can break apart soon. This one's way bigger than this one, so I'll probably just pop that little one out. And yeah, everything's transitioning okay. It looks a little rough when it first transitions, but there's still a ton of food happening. And let me show you my starts. So I have an abundance of food ready to go into these towers, and I have this all the time. You guys know I talk about interval planting and turning things over quickly, and when you have starts like this, it helps to get you to eat food more often. So when we have starts that are ready to go, it helps you to eat food off your tower more often. It might mean that I come and harvest a cabbage that's not even fully mature because I have something that's really large in my seed starting station that really needs to have a spot, and that works out perfectly because even though the cabbage may not be fully grown, it's still substantial enough to beef up a meal for us, and it ensures that I'm constantly eating food off the towers. Now, the better you get at interval planting, the better you'll be at timing things so that you can have the full mature head of cabbage and not have to eat things that are younger. But like right now, while we're transitioning into the garage, a lot of things are about the same age. So I am going to be eating food that's a little bit younger for a while until I get these towers on a good solid interval planting schedule, just because some of the things didn't transfer. A lot of the mature plants had to be taken out and consumed because they weren't going to transition very well. So interval planting, my formula for interval planting is to take 1/4 of your grow ports and start that many seeds every 2 to 3 weeks. Now the 2 to 3 weeks could be 2 to 4 depending on how much produce you eat and how fast your things are growing. Food's gonna grow a little bit slower indoors. It's gonna grow slower in cooler temperatures. So that may change it a little bit, but for me, it's about 2 to 3 weeks. If I go longer than 3 weeks, I will think I'm fine, and then all of a sudden there'll be a backlog because I'll harvest a ton of lettuce that's ready, or I'll make a big meal out of something, and then we'll have a little delay in having seedlings ready to go into the tower. So I try to avoid that. So 1/4 your grow port, and you're going to take out of that 1/4, so if we have 28 grow spots here on this tower, well, this one has a baby greens extension kit. This one has 28 back here. I'm gonna take 7 rock wool and start that many seeds every 2 to 3 weeks. And out of that 7, I want 80% to be fast turnover foods that we eat a lot. Things like baby greens that I can pull off the tower. I'm gonna harvest the whole thing and eat it. And then the other 20%, you need to be planning. I like to plan those where I'm thinking forward. When are my tomatoes gonna burn out? Do I need to start a new seedling so that I have a tapered age group of tomatoes, so I always have tomatoes? Do I need to start some new peppers? How am I doing on celery? Those things take longer to germinate. And in my ebook, I have the germination rates and the interval planting times for a lot of this produce, just to give you an idea of what works for me. And you may have to tweak that in your climate depending where you're growing, but ideas on like planting tomatoes every 3 months and peppers every 3 months, and how often do I plant my parsley and things like that, so that I can stay on top of it and always have access to parsley and all of those amazing things that we like to eat. So 80% fast turnover greens. 2 weeks phase, it's gonna be mostly things like lettuce, and bok choys grow really fast. Chinese cabbage is a little bit slower because it's larger, so you might want to plant those every month instead of every 2 weeks. And then something like kale can stay in your tower most of the winter. So you can plant kale every 6 weeks so that you have younger kale in case something happens to a mature kale, or you can harvest the whole mature one in a few months. Now, kale can stay, like I said, on the tower for 4 or 5 months, and you can just eat off of it. But it's also nice to make sure you stay on top of the seeds. So when that plant is ready to come out, you're not starting from scratch and planting your kale when you're taking one out, because then you're gonna be without kale. And I'll do kale baby greens so that I can have kale frequently. So I'll plant kale baby greens once a month and then harvest those when they're young. Mustards are another fast turnover. Mizuna, Mabuna, Chijimusai grows pretty quickly if you seed it 4 to 6 seeds per rock wool. Yeah, and then you're going to branch out into things like Swiss chard and kale and collards and cabbage leaves. Those can stay on the tower pretty much all winter. So I want to start those seeds every maybe 4 to 6 weeks, because I'm not going to let them stay on the tower. I'm eventually going to harvest the whole plant when it gets really big, especially indoors, just to free up space and light. So even though I can keep them on all winter, I'm gonna eat off of those heavily and turn them over pretty fast, just so that I keep things nice and tidy. I tend to eat food younger and smaller on the towers when I'm growing indoors. Because things take a little bit longer, I just find it better to eat things when they're smaller and do a faster turnover when we're growing indoors to increase the amount of food. And that requires always starting your seeds and having a good seed starting station and seedling grow station, so that your plants can grow to a pretty substantial size on the seedling grow station before they go into the tower. That also speeds up the process. If I can spend 6 weeks on my seedling station growing and getting really strong, then when I put that seedling into the tower, it's gonna take off really quickly. And in that 6 weeks, I can grow 2 rounds of lettuce like this. So that's a big amount of food that I can be growing really quickly while letting some of those other foods mature a little bit in the seed starting station or the seedling station, whatever you want to call it, the nursery. And that helps to turn over your food faster when you're growing indoors as well. Now, one thing to note, you never want to take more than 1/3 of most plants at one time. There are some different plants that can handle being cut back and staying in the tower as more of a perennial. Right now, a stinging nettle I'm doing that with. Stinging nettle is a great one that can handle that. You can cut the roots in half, you can cut the whole top off, and it'll regrow and can handle that. But most things, if you have a little seedling and you harvest more than 1/3 of it, it's going to stunt the growth and it's going to put it into a state of shock. And then it takes a while for it to start growing again. And if you do it too often, then it can stress the plant to the point where it's going to want to spread its genetic. It's going to go to seed and flower just from that stress. And I put a lot of that information in my ebook as well. So let's plant this tower out. And then we have a special package from eBay we need to deal with. And I want to show you guys how to get rid of a lot of seeds if you have seeds that have been aging and you need to use them up. All right, here I've already planted a lot of cucumber and squash, but I want to plant more. So I've got a few there. I have some Emiko cabbage and some kale here that needs a home. I have some broccoli rabe and some cabbage here. Now this is leaf cabbage. So I've mentioned before, if you want a ball of cabbage like you would get at a grocery store, that's not really going to be the most efficient way to grow when you're growing indoors. I've done it before. I have a fun reel where I harvest one and it looks like that plant from Feed Me Seymour. So I have grown full-size cabbage where it produced a nice size head of cabbage indoors. But it takes a really long time. It takes up real estate, so you're not able to eat quickly off your tower. And so sometimes when we're planting too many of those things on a tower, it leaves you waiting and waiting and waiting for food, and you're wondering why this tower isn't feeding you. And so we have to be mindful of that. If we are growing, especially just on one tower, that's why I suggest 80% is fast turnover foods, because you want to be able to eat off your tower frequently, and then focus maybe 1/4 of your tower total on slower things or things that continue to fruit. So tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, squash, cucumbers, those things take time to mature, and then they're going to fruit for a little while, and then they're going to burn out and you have to start over. So cabbage, collards, those take a while to grow. So you can do those for sure, but if you plant them like leaf cabbage, you'll end up with a lot more food that you can eat frequently. So leaf cabbage is basically just taking 4 to 6 seeds instead of 1, and your goal is to grow big, gigantic, gorgeous leaves of cabbage that you use just like you would regular cabbage. You can chop it up, you can make sauerkraut, you can do all the same things. It's just getting it faster on a tower. So let's put some of these in, and then I have some kale, and it looks like this is all kale. I reuse my nut pots, so these all came from outside. Some of them are very broken, and that's okay, they still work. All right, I put those in already before we started this video. And then up here is my baby greens extension kit. I love the baby greens extension kit because I can grow all these greens. And I can grow things like beets, and I can grow some Emiko cabbages and things up here, celery. It just gives me a lot more options. All right, looking at this tower, I have a pretty mature chijimusai that I'm gonna harvest next week. I've got my celery that can be divided soon. I have some pretty healthy parsley, lots of baby greens that'll be eaten soon, some sort of brassica that I'm growing just for greens here, more celery, so lots of variety. Some of this stuff will be eaten in the next couple of days. So I want to think through, what do I want on this tower? If I want to do, let's say, there's not a perfect science. People ask me where to put things all the time. These are all cucumbers, by the way, now that I'm looking at them. So a cucumber's gonna trail. So I want it to have a little space. And I will put a cage on here eventually, maybe. These are dwarf cucumbers, so they don't get very big. So I'm gonna put one there. And I'm just gonna follow that theme all the way around the second row here. My thoughts being, I don't want them too close to the ground because they'll end up on the floor and outside of the light. These are small, so if I put a cage on here, I don't have, if I put them up high, I have to put my cage all the way up high. I can just do 2 rows of cage. You don't have to build the whole thing, and I like to do that. So I may just put the cage 2 rows high and let the cucumber sort of have the bottom. So I put 3 of those in, and what that does is it allows you space here on the bottom to do things like these celery. So when I break these celery apart, I can put them in between the cucumber. They're gonna do great. They're vertical and they're strong and they're tall, and they will come popping up through those cucumbers and won't be shaded out. If you put something like lettuce here, it cannot thrive. Lettuce really needs, like these right here, this is a Salanova red oak leaf. It gets pretty big. With it in the baby green section, surrounded by a bunch of other greens, like these fast growing baby greens, it's not gonna get super big. It's only gonna get maybe the size of my hand. I knew that putting it in there. I just didn't want to give real estate to that particular head of lettuce because it didn't look like it was gonna be gigantic anyway. So if you put those down there, they're not gonna thrive. But things like Emiko cabbage, bok choys, Chinese cabbage, your kales and collards do really well in between things like cucumbers, because those are really hardy plants that if they need light, they will find it. They're not going to be shaded out. They will maneuver their way, and they can go up and they can go out around those plants. So we've got those. Now that being in mind, let's see if we have anything we can put down there. I have one more I want to grow. I think I'm going to put this one over by the tomatoes. All right, I'm excited to be growing inside for the sake of creating content, because growing indoors is different than growing outdoors, and I want to have that information available to you guys so you can grow the maximum amount of food the most effective way possible. But it's also harder to, I haven't quite figured out how to maneuver in here to film. All right, let's put some. All right, so I mentioned cabbage towards the bottom. If you're going to have something like cucumbers is a good idea. Cabbage also gets really, really big. And so if I put it here, I risk shading out if I'm growing indoors. Now when it's outside, not as sensitive, but when we're growing indoors, I like to reserve these middle spots for things that need a little bit more light, because that's where the most of the light is going to come. You're gonna have less light towards the top, especially if you have an extension on like me, and then towards the bottom it can be less. So I put my things that are hardier in some of those spots. These, let's see here. This one has 4 seeds, which is what I want. So I'm gonna put that one right in the bottom. This is kohlrabi, and this has 2. I like to seed my kohlrabi with 2. Kohlrabi is one I want to be a shining star. It needs lots of light to produce that ball. So we're gonna put that one here in the middle. I'll do another kohlrabi. I'm just gonna follow the theme and do kohlrabi all the way around. Okay. And let's do, I really want a lot of purple cabbage. Let's do another purple cabbage. This one has 5 in it, which is awesome. I'm gonna put that towards the bottom on the other side. All right. And then this one only has 2, and this one only has 2, so I'm actually going to put those together, and you can break apart. Here, I'll just show you guys. So you can carefully, these have roots on all 4 sides, so peel apart your rock wool. You may take a little bit of the root, it's fine. Don't take too much. But... Okay, so I've taken off a lot of that one. And that one, and we're gonna put these 2 together. And now I have 4 because I'm going for leaf cabbage. And where can we put this one? I'm gonna put this one on a different tower. So let's finish this one. We've got 1, 2 spots on the bottom. I'm going to put some kale on the bottom. This is a dazzling blue kale. Really fun to grow. And then I'm going to put some of these kale. All right, we'll save those. In this section here, I'm going to do an Emiko cabbage. I want this one to have lots of light, because I want it to form into a full cabbage head. Okay, that's it on this tower. Now there is a beet here, and this is a great example of harvesting when something's a little bit young. It's a young beet, but it's growing alone in this one grow port, and that's not a real efficient way to grow. So I'm gonna harvest that beet. And I actually want to make a collard wrap, and I'll shred it and add it to that, so we get a super nutritious meal. Beet greens, and see, it's a small beet, but it's still nice and healthy. I just don't want to give that kind of real estate. I've got beets growing up in the baby green section, so that's where we can eat our food younger, and don't be afraid to turn it over, because I have this, I want to do this one. I have this Emiko cabbage that's ready for a home, and I want to get it into a tower. All right, now we need to plan out our baby green section. All right, I have so many gorgeous starts, but I have 2 more home towers that have baby greens extension kits on it. That's why I have so many of these, because we're gonna need them, and we go through them a lot. So, baby greens. I have mentioned if you want to grow a head of lettuce, you really need to designate a nice open spot for that head of lettuce to mature, especially when growing indoors. So I like to use the middle section for that. On the baby greens extension, I like to grow baby greens, these massive bouquets of greens that grow really quickly. You can grow full heads of lettuce on here. It's just going to stunt them. So instead of doing my lettuce up here, I'm gonna designate this to some Mizuna. This one's small. We'll give that one a little more time. Sometimes they get shaded out, even in your grow station. That's a great size one. And in that case, I'll just take some of these that are shading it out, and it'll offer more light for some of the ones that need it. So we have a combination of Mizuna and Chijai Maisai or Chijimusai. I usually plant these 4 to 6. Someone asked me if they ever get tangled up. Well, here you go. They got tangled up. It's not really the roots. The roots come up pretty quickly. This one just has some leggy stems that have got twisted up with a friend. All right, Chijimusai, one of my absolute favorite foods. Yeah, let's do. These are foods that grow really quickly, especially when we plant them 4 to 6 per rock wool. And they're super nutritious. And it falls into that fast food category. Things you can plant every 2 weeks. I let them sit in the grow station for almost 3 weeks. And then we put them in the tower. So I have the same situation as before. I've got too many of these. And some of them only have a couple of plants. So I'm going to merge them. And, you know, it's a wasted rock wool. But it'll be a faster turnover of food, which is what's most important to me. And, you know, I can't always help if not all of them start in a rock wool. So I find it better just to merge them like this. And take all the little ones. All right, so it looks like 2 rock wool were wasted. But now I have this bundle. It looks crazy, but it will grow. It'll come together, and these will perk up and take off in no time. All right, let's find a good spot where this can get lots of light. There we go. Okay, so do we have more spots? And some of this lettuce that's looking droopy, it's because it was outside. I took it out of the tower and then put it back in. I'm just not ready to eat it, and I like to keep the food on the tower until I'm ready to eat it. Keeps it the freshest and most nutrient dense. So these will be eaten in the next 2 or 3 days. All right, we have some Swiss chard and looks like some turnips and some mustards, some Mizuna mustards. So we're gonna put these in the baby green section. I will keep the Swiss chard in here until it gets larger, and I'm using it as a nursery, and then I'll take it out and put it in a regular grow port if I want to let it get big. Sometimes I just eat them small. Keep harvesting off of them. That is one you can harvest off of and let it regrow. I still try to stick with the 1/3 rule. And this right here is endive. And endive actually is really hardy and can grow into a full-size head in the baby greens section. It's just a little bit more durable than lettuce. So I'm gonna put that one in there. We're gonna do this tower. This is all micro dwarf tomatoes. There's one dwarf on here. I wish I knew where it was at because I would actually move it. I'm going to move it as soon as I figure out which one it was. But I found some really cool things that I want to share with you guys that I'm going to put on this tower. And I just alternated my tomatoes, left a grow port, not in between every one of them, but in some of them. This one will get a cage. But tomatoes are going to take a while before they get large enough to have to worry about that. And I can grow some pretty quick food in between them before they even get large. Now, one good thing of growing indoors is it's raining outside and it's actually getting cold now. So I do enjoy being in here where it's warm. Ooh. Okay, I just watered these and they're sitting in too much water. So this is a Chinese cabbage. This is called Bernat and grows really tall. It's very narrow and has these gorgeous thick stems. So I am going to first off thin this one because for some reason I put way too many. Because I want the whole head of cabbage. And with more than 2, you're just not going to get that. So I thinned it down to 2. And we're going to put that down here because it grows vertical. It doesn't look like it right now, but it will grow up and strong. I have some endive with lots of roots. So we're going to put these in. I'll put them up here. I have some kale. This is a turnip. I'm not going to put that one in because I want to have more than just one turnip in there. For real estate purposes, I like to do 2 or 3 or up as many as 5 per rock wool. And so I'll find other turnips and do what I did before and put them together. So this is a Imiko cabbage bundle. That one's going to grow faster, more as greens. We have some more kohlrabi. Let's put those in. All right, and then these are my Tom Thumb peas. These are a miniature pea or a patio pea. They only get like a foot, 12 inches by 12 inches. Haven't had a whole lot of luck with these as far as being super productive, but I'm not giving up. So I seeded them 3 peas per rock wool, and you can see that strong root system. They're small because they're a small plant. So we're gonna put these in with our tomatoes. All right, we have one more grow port. I'm gonna do some kale. Let's do this Russian red kale. This one's seeded 6. 1, 2, hold on. This one has 5 plants. I'm gonna put it here. All right, and this tower's full. So we still have some starts, but you can already see how many I've gone through, and it's, especially if you can grow on a baby greens extension kit, you can really up how many greens you grow. So these will go back on my grow station. Okay, so we have those loaded. Let me show you a trick how to use up old seeds. I'm trying to clear out all my seeds over the next probably 6 weeks. And then I ordered all new seeds, and it's just a good idea to do that. I have things from my soil gardens, so things that are a couple of years old, so I really need to go through those. And I have a special, and we're gonna open our special box. All right, so because I grow in a garage where the door's open, I am highly exposed to aphids. A lot of people with greenhouses are as well. And it's because aphids are around year round, but in the spring and the summer, they have predators, and so there's something to eat them. When we move into the winter, we don't have predators anymore. So in the fall, you'll see them ramp up because all the things that eat them start to hibernate or die off. And then in the winter, or if you're growing indoors, there is no predator. So I always say we have to be the predator. We have to be the biggest pest. I do that by just checking on my plants. They like things like this Merlot cabbage, so I'll just come every day and just look around, look under the leaves. If I see one, I just remove it and handle them that way. Sometimes if they're getting out of control, or I feel like I'm seeing too many, I'll spray with some water. Occasionally I'll add a little Meyer soap. I don't like to use a whole lot of soap on my towers. It makes the towers messy, makes the plants a little messy. Why is this dry? Oh, it's not dry. It felt like it was dry. So that's what I like to do to manage them. I also, because I'm in a garage, I purchase a predator. I purchase ladybugs, and you can find these on eBay. I'm not gonna put a link because links like this just expire too quickly, but you can purchase them. And this one's asleep, and they're sort of in a hibernation state, and they will start to wake up. And some of them will fly away, especially when I have the door open like I do right now and it's not super cold outside. So I try to purchase a new bundle every month just to stay on top of having enough to manage aphids, because I'm growing in 7 towers in this garage. And at 1 tower I can manage aphids no problem, even 3 by hand. But with 7, it's too difficult. And I have found this works great. I don't mind ladybugs in here. Look at this. My camera's not focusing well lately. So they're crawling out of the bag already. So I love them. They're a great way to control aphids. They worked excellent. They took my aphid problem down, I would say, by 80% last year. And then I would just check my plants and hand remove the other ones. If I didn't do this and maintenance, I would lose these plants to aphids, because aphids can multiply. They're asexual. They can multiply by 6. I think it's every 24 hours or something crazy. So they can get out of control really, really fast. So if you have a tower indoors, they come in on pests. They come in on fresh produce. They come in on other houseplants you may purchase. And it might just be something you have to deal with. I have found just accepting that I have them takes 90% of the pressure off. The only thing I really hate the most about having them is I have to wash my greens in the winter. And I like to just harvest my greens and eat them. But with aphids, you want to wash them. So I just soak them in a little water with a dash of salt. And that does the trick. So where I'm having aphids right now, I only have them on a couple of spots, but it's on this tomato plant right here, and it had aphids when it was outside. So I'm going to release quite a few onto this plant. All right, so I'm just gonna put the bag along the rim and let them crawl out, and then I'm gonna move it to different towers over the next 30 minutes as they wake up. Okay, our last chore, we're gonna start using up some seeds. Okay, now it's freezing outside and raining. So I went and gathered some potting soil that I had and got it really, really wet. And with this tray, I don't know if you guys can see that line, I filled it up 1 inch with potting soil, a lot of water to keep it really moist. and I made it muddy. So really wet, and it's soaking in all of the water right now, and we're gonna seed these out and grow microgreens. Okay, so I talk about sprouting seeds all the time, and you could use your sprouting seeds for this, but I want to use old seeds. My goal is to use up all of these seeds that I've purchased that are going bad. These were from, I don't remember when, at least 3 years ago, and I've noticed my germination rate's pretty bad with them. They're beet seeds. I wanted to grow tons of beets in my soil gardens and never could get them to grow, so I'm grateful they grow in the towers. But for now, we're just going to use up all of these and make some microgreens. And some of this is just dust coming out. All right, so I'm gonna coat the whole bottom. And I made my potting mix like a mud, super, super moist, because I'm not gonna put dirt over these. I want the seeds to absorb the water from the soil, just from the top down. And I already used almost half that bag. So this is gonna be a mega superfood that I can add to salads, collard wraps, whatever we choose. They are older, but that's okay, because at least we will get something out of the ones that will germinate. So we need to put domes over these. Okay, so the last thing we want to do with microgreens and sprouts, best practice is to do it in the dark. And one of the reasons we don't have vermiculite on these are just sitting on top of the soil. So we need to kind of give them an artificial soil. So I'm going to just put this little cardboard topper on here. I just cut it to match the shape of the dome. You could outline it and then cut it a little bit shy. I just did it by eye. And put the lid on. I want the dome still to be sealed so we can start to create some humidity in there. And that's it. Now it goes here. In a couple of days, I will check it. I'll check it every day, and in a couple of days when I see really good germination, I will take the cardboard off and leave the dome on for maybe another day. And then once I see really good germination and we're starting to fill out, I will take the dome lid off. And then we just let them grow under our light. And with microgreens, we're not going for baby greens. We're going for microgreens. And sprouts are different because sprouts are sprouted in water and not soil. Microgreens, we're gonna let them get all of those sprouts and then harvest them before they get their true leaves and turn into baby greens. So once these start to germinate and sprout some, I'll remove the cardboard, leave the dome on for another day or two, and then I'll take them off and give them just a couple more days, and in 5 to 7 days we should be able to start cutting our microgreens and eating them. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you on the next video.